back. Today's video isn't really a cooking video because we're not using fire and we're not even making food. We're going to be making 3 recipes from a book published in 1772 called The Toilette of Flora, or a collection of the most simple and approved methods of preparing baths, essences, pomatums, powders, perfumes, and scented waters. So these are all recipes for cosmetics, things to keep us looking young and beautiful, but also things to keep us clean. Our first recipe is a powder to prevent baldness. Though this is the most simple recipe that we're going to make today, probably the most simple recipe in the book. Powder your head with powdered parsley seed at night once in 3 or 4 months and the hair will never fall off. So if you are somebody who's already bald, sorry, this isn't going to help you. But if you still have your hair, if you powder your head with this parsley seed, then your hair will never fall out. So good thing we caught it in time. So what we are going to do is take our mortar and pestle and our celery seed. We're going to pour the celery seed into the mortar, going to grind it with the pestle into as fine a powder as we can manage. This takes several minutes, so we fast forwarded the video here. Once it's finished, it's ready for use. Our next recipe is a powder to cleanse the teeth. People in the 18th century were really concerned about tooth care. They had toothbrushes, and there are a lot of recipes in this book about how to clean the teeth, strengthen the teeth, help with tooth decay, and even bad breath. All of these ingredients that we're about to use, like coral, dragon's blood, cinnamon, cloves, cuttlefish bone, eggshells, and sea salt, are all things that we can find today. Now these are just in much different forms. The recipe calls for prepared coral, and what I kind of read that as is powdered coral. You can find coral today very easily. Actually, you can get coral for the bottom of your fish tank. What I have here is a supplement, a calcium supplement made from coral and other trace elements. You do want to be careful about how you source your coral because you want to make sure that it's environmentally and ethically sourced. Dragon's blood is a resin from certain tropical plants, and it is still used today. You can buy it in this resin form or in a powdered form, and it's still used as an incense. Cinnamon and cloves are obviously very easily come by. I bought these at the grocery store, used in lots of cooking, especially around the holidays, and they are very aromatic. Cuttlebone or cuttlefish bone is still used very widely too. If you have a bird, you probably have this. It's used for beak sharpening, and this is natural. Actually, at first thought we have birds, and I thought that this was pressed, but this is what the cuttle bones look like, and they grind up very easily. Next you'll need calcined eggshells, and I had to look up what calcined meant, and they're actually being used in some scientific studies with biofuels right now, which was very interesting. But to make these, I took eggshells, I cleaned them, removed the membranes, and let them dry, and then I baked them. And so they're kind of brittle, and you can kind of hear that sound. And we need sea salt, decrepitated. But if you look that up, you have to heat the salt until it crackles and essentially is dry. And so I took my sea salt and I did that. Now, after prepping the things that needed prepped, I powdered them in my mortar and pestle. And so now you're going to see the mixing part. The recipe calls for 1 ounce of coral and 1 ounce of dragon's blood. To that, we add 3/4 of an ounce of cinnamon and 3/4 of an ounce of cloves. We need 1/2 ounce of cuttlebone and 1/2 ounce of those powdered eggshells. We need 1/8 of an ounce of sea salt. This may seem like a strange amount, but it's actually not called 1/8 of an ounce in the book. In this recipe, it uses a term diachm, D-I-A-C-H-M, and what that means is 1/8 an ounce. So it may say 6 diachms or drachms, And so these are different measures that were used for compounding medicines and other things like that. So our next recipe isn't really a recipe. There are lots and lots of recipes for what's called a washball. These are for washing skin, and they can also be used to help shave the face. But these are different than, say, this, the bar of soap. This, we are going to add scent. You can add color to them, or plant materials like herbs. This is lavender, which we can add to our wash balls today. There are lots of different recipes. You can add honey. You can add other scents, other kinds of scented waters, herbs, colors. There's lots of them, lots of recipes for purple wash balls and red wash balls and white. But the difference is that sometimes the things that they're using to color them are not good for us, like white lead and other things like that. So today we're just going to make a general recipe with unscented soap. This is locally, I purchased this locally, unscented, and we are going to add scented water. I've got rose water that I've made, and I have some lavender water that I've made, so maybe we'll make some of each. And we might even mix some lavender flowers in to make them extra nice. And like I said, rose and lavender are medicinal plants, right? We're going to use those for specific ailments or problems. So maybe that adds a little bit of a medicinal element to our soap. So for this, it says to shade it or to slice it very thinly. And so good, if you're going to try making these at home, a good way to do this would be to use a cheese grater. But I'm just going to use my knife here because that's what it says to do. If you're going to try this at home, I would suggest a cheese grater, and also watch your fingers. Now I've got my soap all chopped up, and there are some pieces in here a little bit bigger than I would like them to be. And at this point, if we were going to do this the absolute correct 18th century way, I would put this in a wooden box, and I would put it on top of my oven so that when I baked, these would have a little heat reaching them. They would dry out, so that when I add the scent, it would help it to bind together a little bit more and a little less lumpy. Try to break up some of these pieces a little bit smaller. And even with a bar of soap, or with this soap that's sort of made naturally, as you cut into it, you can feel it get softer and that there's a little bit more moisture inside. So if we were to dry it out, we could grind it up and make a nice fine wash ball. So I'm gonna add some lavender here, mix it into the soap. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can add your scented water directly into the soap, which I'm going to do, but you have to be careful to not add too much. Other people I have seen kind of wet their hands with the liquid and then form the wash balls that way. I have a hard time getting enough liquid that way, so we're just going to do it by adding the liquid to the soap. And there are also like many kinds of soap in the 18th century. Steel soap, which would use olive oil or almond oil. That was especially nice for the skin. Now we're gonna gather up some of these shavings, and we're gonna kind of play with it like it's a meatball, squish it together. It'll get soft, kind of like Play-Doh, but not quite. So there'll still be these pieces, but it'll be malleable. So we're gonna form this into a ball. It's gonna look chunky because we did not dry it out and powder it. There is number one, and we are going to let these dry out just in the air. Soap recipes similar to this one can be found in the Toilette of Flora or in Hannah Glass's cookbook, The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy. Both editions can be found online
sometimes for free.
People in the 18th century may not have showered every day, but they did try to keep clean. And they tried to keep clean the best they could, especially with what they understood. It's very interesting to me that a lot of things, the ingredients in the tooth powders, contain a lot of calcium. So they may not really have understood what they were doing, but they might have been kind of on the right track. So I hope you learned a little bit today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!